all around the globe. People continue to be victimized by Muslims as these people show little interest in assimilating with westernized countries. As these savages continue to spread their Islamic caliphate across the Middle East and now into Europe as they disguise themselves as war-ravaged refugees, a frightening new tactic to target infidel women is now emerging after several women's frightening encounter at traffic lights are now going viral. Now women everywhere are being told be on high alert as this new trend of crime is now popping up in westernized countries where these refugees are now invading, and there's very little authorities can do to stop it. Over the past couple of years, we've seen a drastic change to the landscape of countries across Europe as these moron leaders keep calling for more and more refugees to invade and overtake their countries, all in the name of political correctness. Despite rapes and violent crimes skyrocketing, these liberal leaders continue to let even more refugees invade their lands, turning a blind eye to the countless women being victimized. Now these refugees have a frightening new way to target Western women, and it's disturbingly being done right out in the open where no one would even expect it. Over the past week in the Stockport area of England, several women have come forward with terrifying stories about how they've been sitting in their cars waiting on traffic lights to change when they're suddenly approached by gangs of Muslim men who then try to gain entry into their cars. One victim, identified as Carla Grant, described the incident on Facebook where she relayed how two men tried to victimize her at a stoplight. Two men attempted to get into my car while I was sat at traffic lights in Offerton, she stated. As the male was walking towards the driver's side, he looked like he was just crossing the road, then quickly went for my door handle. The men were definitely working as a team in the crime, as Grant says that out of nowhere a second male then appeared at the other side of the car. At that time, out of nowhere, another male was attempting my passenger side. Luckily my doors were locked, so I just raced off through a red light and nearly got hit by another driver in the process. The incident occurred at 7:45 p.m., and Grant says that the incident left her completely frazzled, but she's hoping that other women will use extreme caution when driving alone. I am okay, although shaken up. She added, warning other drivers, please lock your doors. I feel threatened myself and worried for my girls. The men were described as being in their 20s and Asian, which we all know is the politically correct term for being inbred vermin from the Middle East. Another woman reported a similar incident in England, where she said a man jumped in front of her car trying to get her to stop, as two other men came out of nowhere flanking her car, where they attempted to open doors on both sides. Thankfully, this unnamed woman had her doors locked at the time. The woman's mother told Manchester Evening News, she was absolutely terrified, and I think people need to be warned. Aquinas College is nearby where there are hundreds of kids. Many of them drive but probably don't have new cars that have self-locking doors. Thank God that these women had their doors locked at the time, but this appears to be a new way that Muslim men are targeting infidel women. Who knows what would have happened to these women, had they been taken as victims by these Muslim gangs? In ISIS' latest magazine edition of Rumiyah, yes, ISIS has a publication, believe it or not, they are now advising their foot soldiers to use Craigslist as a way to harness the power of the internet to find victims for their jihad. There's several different chilling scenarios that the terrorists offer their readers, providing them with creative ways to slaughter as many people as possible, by luring their victims to locations by posing as sellers on Craigslist. Here's the story from PJ Media, the Islamic State magazine that has published tutorials on vehicle, knife and arson attacks as a tool of lone jihad is now encouraging terrorists to acquire guns at shows and shops and take hostages not for ransom but to create as much carnage and terror as one possibly can. The latest issue of Rumiyah magazine, distributed online in 10 languages including English, offers another installment of the Just Terror Tactics series, praising lone jihadists including US terrorists who have set heroic examples with their operations. The objective of taking hostages, would-be jihadists are told, is not to hold large numbers of the kafir hostage in order to negotiate one's demands, but to sow terror with the language of force, the language of killing, stabbing and slitting throats, chopping off heads, flattening them under trucks, and burning them alive, until they give the jizya tax, while they are in a state of humiliation. If you think that's demented, keep reading because it gets better. They then show different scenarios for massacres their readers can easily plot at home, which would all easily fly under the radar of the intelligence and law enforcement communities. PJ Media goes on, the scenario for such an attack is that one assaults a busy, public, and enclosed location and rounds up the kuffar, disbelievers, who are present. Having gained control over the victims, one should then proceed to slaughter as many of them as he possibly can before the initial police response, as was outstandingly demonstrated by the Mujahideen who carried out the Bataclan Theatre massacre during the course of the Blessed Paris raid. The article instructs. Orlando nightclub shooter Omar Mateen superbly demonstrated this scenario of taking hostages simply to delay police while killing them when, having armed himself with an assault rifle and a handgun, he single-handedly slaughtered 49 sodomites. Jihadists are told that Europeans should try to acquire guns in conflict zones or from underground dealers, and much like its Crusader European counterparts, the UK faces a gun control dilemma as it feebly attempts to fend off the influx of weapons. But to no avail, so attackers are advised to find guns readily available for purchase on the streets of Britain. In the United States, anything from a single-shot shotgun all the way up to a semi-automatic AR-15 rifle can be purchased at showrooms or through online sales, by way of private dealers, with no background checks, and without requiring either an ID or a gun license, ISIS states. And with approximately 5,000 gun shows taking place annually within the United States, the acquisition of firearms becomes a very easy matter. In another scenario, ISIS tells their minions to lure their targets by placing ads for unemployment, where they could rent a fake office and then murder each victim as they arrive at the fake interview site. Another suggested lure is advertising a studio apartment for rent, small enough not to attract large families, and capture and kill the interested tenants. It might even help to include in the ad that the apartment is ideal for students, ISIS adds. Jihadists are also encouraged to place some stuff for sale on buy and sell websites such as Craigslist, Gumtree, eBay, The Loot, and others, and specify that collection and payment is only available in person and that only cash is accepted. Also, the item being advertised should be something that requires the victim to enter one's property. It is likewise important to be realistic when advertising and not advertise something far below its valued price, as this can attract the attention of authorities searching for stolen goods or possibly attract other suspicions, the article states.